Greetings from Berlin. We miss you all. We are trying to stay in touch with partners on both sides of the Atlantic through individual phone calls and emails, but it's not the same. We miss the deep fellowship around the table. This is my effort to update the larger group. I am following the news daily coming out of Russia and neighboring countries. You may have seen or heard that Russia has a rapidly increasing number of infections. They are now third in the world. They are not reporting a large number of deaths, but most of us would conclude that this is a lack of transparency and underreporting. Russia has not yet peaked. Moscow is in complete lockdown. One family member is allowed to go to the grocery store or to the pharmacy once a week. They are allowed to walk the dog, but only within 100 meters of their building door. I have friends who are walking their cat just to get outside. Otherwise, they are all required to shelter in place. People are getting restless. There is an increase in domestic violence. There are demonstrations in outlying regions. Most of the demonstrations have to do with a lack of information and a lack of healthcare resources, rather than issues of personal freedom. From what I've been able to read, the healthcare system in Russia is as overwhelmed as in other places. They have had to enlist medical students for the COVID-19 wards in the hospitals. There's not enough personal protective equipment, and first responders, nurses, and doctors are getting sick, and some are dying. In one hospital recently, a large group of nurses just up and quit because promises made about personal protective equipment and bonuses were not being honored. Nurses are grossly underpaid in Russia. In many outlying regions, people are angry with the well-to-do Russians who have the luxury of international travel, for they are perceived to be the patient's zero. It reminds people of the sharp divide between rich and poor in Russia. I remember a news video early on in the crisis in Italy. The cathedral square in Milan was virtually empty, except for a few tourists from Russia. One of them spoke to the cameraman saying, "We're Russians, it's just the flu." I wonder who was watching back in Moscow. In the Smolensk region, they do have more freedom of movement than in Moscow, but many things are closed down. Many people are now without work, and they worry about how to feed their families. The churches are closed too, but they are distributing written materials that include Bible verses, hymns, and a written sermon for them to share as a family for worship and prayer. Our colleagues are also using Zoom for meetings between pastors within the region. Some churches are using Zoom for Bible studies and for prayer groups. Most say that they are learning a deeper appreciation for church community, and they long to be able to gather together again. As in so many places, graduations have been canceled, funerals happen with few or no mourners, and weddings have been postponed. There is confusion among high school graduates about how they will sit for the exams that determine whether they can go on for higher education or not. It's hard to look ahead and think about the future. There are positives, however. We heard recently that the draft board shut down for the month of April. This will postpone military service for just a little while. Social ministry has, of course, come to a standstill. It is likely that summer camps and vacation Bible schools will be canceled. They begin to think about Christmas camps instead. You can trust that when it becomes possible, they will be reaching out again to those in need. The one exception is Davidova, where the construction sponsored by the birthday offering for the long-term care of disabled adults is ongoing. The virus has not disrupted life in the village at this point. All of our plans for spring and summer are gone. I had a trip planned for March for a seminar on compassion fatigue. It was canceled the day before I was supposed to depart. We do hope to reschedule for September, but the longer this lasts, and the more resources globally are taxed, the less likely it seems that it will take place. We had more groups planning to come this year than usual. They've all had to cancel. When Al and I are able to support phone calls between the partners, everyone is joyful, because especially for the Russians, it takes them out of their isolation for just a bit, and it assures them that they are still connected. I'm sure that you all have had similar experiences. It's hard to look too far into the future, but we do trust that things will get better. We have been working on some extraordinary plans to connect people across borders in Europe and the Middle East along common themes. I think we'll have to think differently about what's ahead. Take a step back for now from those extraordinary plans. I think we've all learned a new simplicity through these days of sheltering in place. The Lord has a plan. May we all be listening carefully for his still small voice. We and your Russian partners are praying for you. We hope that you'll hold us in prayer as well. God bless.